you have to have a strong research proposal.
Sure.
Right. I experienced 2 rounds of interviews with these scholars. I mean, there are many times where they said, look, here's the weakness of your research proposal.
Oh.
They pointed out the weaknesses in my research proposal, but yet they still believe in this research proposal. When Turkey and Indonesia, both Muslim democracies and both experiencing democratic backsliding for a few years now, it was only Turkey who fell into autocracy, right? But not Indonesia. And so the question is, why does Indonesia is so resilient in at least defending their democracy? On the other hand, Turkey can right away fall into autocracy. You might be disappointed with my answer, but I would say you don't have to promote democracy.
Welcome to the Student Talk series, a podcast where UIII students discuss various stories about students' life that the general public may not be familiar with.
Dari awal masuk aja udah ditanya, kamu interest di bidang apa, gitu ya.
There are still many people who don't even care about their healthy lifestyle.
All hilarious, engaging and heartbreaking stories will be told lightly and in casual way. Enjoy the show!
Good morning, everyone. Today, welcome to a podcast organized by Yusuf Kala Students Talk in collaboration with ASIS, which is Faculty of Social Science Student Association. My name is Wali Eso, and I'm honored today to be the moderator in this podcast. Today, we are joined by Rizky Adiaksa, an MA student in political science in Universitas Islam International Indonesia here. Rizky has remarkable academic experience and professional experience as well. Rizky has served as a policy advisor, conducted award-winning research on democratization, contributed to many publications on clean energy and inclusive elections, and also represented Indonesia at the international level. Most recently, he also won a scholarship to go and study a PhD with UIII scholarship in London. So this has demonstrated that Rizky is indeed an individual who is highly academic focused. So today he will take us through his academic journey, and then will also tell us how the life in UIII has been as an MA student, to also actually inspire some of the students in the Faculty of Social Sciences and also students in other departments. So to move on with the program, Rizky, I would just like you to introduce yourself better to the audience for them to actually understand and know who do we have today here. So can you briefly also introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you very much for your kind opening and your kind introduction, Wally. When you kind of introduced me briefly, I felt like, okay, there's a lot on my shoulder in the sense that I don't think I'm all of those things. But yeah, I mean, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Rizky Adiaksa. Thank you very much for having me. The pleasure is all mine. And I am a master's student here, just or about to graduate, right, at the end of this August. I studied, at the master level, I studied political science, right? And I also hold a bachelor degree in international relations from Brawijaya University. It's located in East Java, Malang. And then, yes, I will go to London. Alhamdulillah. I will go to London on September to pursue a PhD degree, surprisingly, in economics, from political science to economics. I mean, what a ride, right? Yeah, and I also I have published, some publications, a book chapter. There are some research papers, manuscripts that I'm still working on, finalizing those research papers, and I'm trying to get it, published. So perhaps that's a very brief introduction of myself.
Yeah, thank you so much for your introduction. I think looking at your journey, you have combined both academic experience and also professional experience as well. I'm just wondering, looking at your background, in your BSc, you studied international relations, but in your master's degree in UIII here, you are currently pursuing Master of
Political Science. Yes.
And I think you specialize in comparative politics.
Yes.
Right. So
yes.
Why the twist turn? Because you studied international relation in your undergrads, so most people will expect that you will do your Masters of Political Science, specializing on international relations, since the university is having a program on the international relation.
Right.
But then we are seeing you studying comparative politics instead of international relation. Why? What inspired you to move to comparative politics instead of international relations?
Yeah, very interesting question, right? First of all, I would like to say that international relations is actually, it is, I made a turn, but the turn is not that sharp, right? In the sense that if you have a training in international relation and then you move to political science, it's not that big of a detour, because the anchoring discipline of international relations is actually political science. If I'm not mistaken, I think in the US, right, international relations is actually a sub-discipline of political science. So the main discipline is political science, and then you have two sub-disciplines, or three sub-disciplines actually: comparative politics, international relations, and political economy. I think scholars are debating whether political economy is actually a sub-discipline of comparative politics, right? But the main idea is I don't really take a big sharp, right, in my academic journey. If anything, I would say that studying political science, right, is kind of blessing, because I have the privilege to visit I would say the epistemological root of international relations, right? Because the first time you think about international relations, many layman people think that, oh, you're going to be a diplomat, right? Oh, you will learn French because it's a language of diplomacy, right? It's none of that, right? When you learn international relations, none of that.
Just implying there is misconception about how people see international relations?
I think so. People see me differently when I said that I study international relations. They think I go to the UN once a year. No, it's not the case. I have to read books, right? And what are the books are talking about? They essentially talk about international politics, right? And so revisiting the root thoughts of those studies is really great, right? And that's why I took a detour to studying democracy, subjects that are essentially or quintessentially politics, right? And I took that. I studied those subjects.
Okay, thank you so much. I think you answered the question well. Now, looking at your journey to go to PhD, and then I can see like there's a slight twist in kind of your academic journey, because I believe you want to study economic policy in your master's.
Yes.
How do you connect, in your PhD, how do you connect that to your academic background in international relations and now in political science, comparative politics?
Right. There's a lot of background story. There's a lot of background story in it. I don't know where to start, but like your question is something that the interviewer panelist for my scholarship also talk about, right? So in the process of applying to that scholarship, it's called the IRRI Scholarship, provided by the ISRSF, the Indonesian Scholarship and Research Support Foundation. They have aided quite a number of young Indonesians to study in the US and in the UK. Some of them have returned to Indonesia holding PhD degree, which is good, right? Yeah, as I mentioned before, I had to go through 2 rounds of interviews. And the ones who interviewed me was a very prominent scholar in political science by the name of Professor Jeffrey Winters. And Jeffrey Winters has a very influential book entitled Oligarchy. He talks about oligarchy in Indonesia. It's a very fascinating book. He's the one who interviewed me. And one more person is an economist, right? Jonathan Pincus, right? Professor Jonathan Pincus is also a very prominent scholar. I think his dissertation talks about, class struggles in Central Java, Indonesia. He talks about the peasantry dynamics, right? The class dynamics in Central Java, right? So you can imagine I'm applying for a PhD and there's 2 giant scholars interviewing my research proposal, right? And they knew that my background is all about politics, right? However, I tried to market that, look, I know a little bit of economy because I study political economy, right? And if you study political economy, you need to at least know a little bit of macroeconomics, right? Maybe not microeconomics, but more like a macroeconomics, right? And that's how I marketed. And very interesting, Professor Jeffrey Winter said that you maybe have background or academic background in political science, but you can still have PhD in economics. So it's okay. I mean, interdisciplinary arrangement, let's say, right, is actually accepted outside, right? So it's not that big of a deal. Like, if you have an undergraduate in history and then you have PhD in physics, why not, right? You will have a very rich perspectives, right? And you might have some novelties in your research because you combine all of these perspectives, right, in your thinking. I think that's.
Yeah, thank you. I think you've already mentioned that interdisciplinary is very, very key and it's very, very important. And when one studies political science, it is not that you only want to remain in the international relation era or international relation aspect or comparative aspect, but also you can go to other areas like economics to go and do your PhD or second master's. I'm just wondering, like, I saw the scholarship online. I googled the scholarship to see how competitive the scholarship is, and I realized that it is highly competitive. So what made you stand out to actually get this scholarship to go and pursue PhD while you are even in your second master's, or while you are even in your master's degree program?
I will ask that question to Professor Jeffrey Winters and Jonathan Pincus again, because I don't know why my application stands out, right? I mean, if you are looking for if you're looking for someone to be trained in economics, right, to pursue PhD in economics, I don't think you're looking for someone like me. you will look for someone else with, you know, perhaps a more promising profile.
Perhaps maybe your extracurricular activities give you an edge to other applicants. Like maybe your publication, you've been very active in terms of publications and other extracurricular activities like traveling.
Yeah, conferences. I think other applications also have extraordinary curriculum vitae, right? I believe they already have some publications in the field of economics. They also attend so many conferences, perhaps more conferences than I do. So to be brutally honest, I don't know why my application stand out. However, now let's talk about some guesses why my application stands out, right? I'm trained in political science. I'm trained as a comparativist, right, in political science. So what I can do is I applied those trainings into my research proposal, right? Because in the application, I had to write down like 1,000 words, perhaps only 700 words, to talk about my research. My research plan, right? So it's essentially a research proposal, but only 700 words, right? So it's a very concise, research proposal. And I applied my comparativist view on it. And it has to touch economic dimension, right? What I did was, here's what I proposed, right? All right, so this is what I said to Professor Jonathan Pincus. I hope it's okay, right? I'm just, sharing my experience. If we look at the adoption of renewable energies, particularly on electricity generation, of all Southeast Asian countries, right? Who do you think? Perhaps this is also a question for you, right? Who do you think adopt more, clean energy in Southeast Asia? Which country do you think adopt more clean energy in Southeast Asia?
Maybe Vietnam.
Yeah,
Vietnam.
That's right. Do you know who's the second cleanest in electricity generation?
Maybe Indonesia.
No. No.
But I know Vietnam is among the champions of clean energy transition in Southeast Asia.
It's true. Yes, it's true. Vietnam.
Yeah.
And the second just after Vietnam is not Singapore.
Oh,
not Singapore. Not Malaysia. The two richest country in the region is actually Cambodia.
Cambodia, okay.
Right. Now, if you look at it, I think these facts, right, these comparative facts violate many, I'm not going to say many, but violate some of the most influential political economic theory, right? Because the theory kind of says that technological transformation and technological adoption is more probable in rich countries, right? Because let's say buying a solar panel, it is more probable for Singaporeans to buy a solar panel rather than Vietnamese, right?
Sure.
Because they have the money to transition. It is more probable for Malaysians to buy a rooftop solar panel rather than Indonesians, right?
Sure.
Because it's more probable, right? Does geography matters? Geography does not matter because all Southeast Asian countries are within the equatorial line, right? And we have roughly the same exposure of sunlight, right? Sure. And so in terms of the incentives to transition to at least solar panel, we basically have the same incentives, right? So those are when you look at the comparative view, you might uncover some puzzles, right? Puzzles that you can market to these giant scholars and to convince them that, look, here's the puzzle, right? I want to research this, and this is a very pertinent issue, right? I mean, energy transition is, we talk energy transition every single day, basically. It's a very pertinent issue, and I think for my PhD, I will research this. And they buy it. And they think that, okay, you're worth the scholarship, right? Sure. Your idea matters, your idea is important, and we believe that you can make a scholarly, at least, right, scholarly contribution, hopefully policy contribution in the future.
So if I can understand your response, it's like what you stand out is more of like your research proposal, because what you explain here, like your research proposal looks unique, and for the fact that it is very, very relevant, looking at it talks about, I think, energy transition.
Yeah, I
as
talk
you mentioned,
about energy transition.
And we all know, like, currently climate change is an issue that is trending globally. And there are so many research we need so much of research into climate change policies, either in energy transition or climate finance or things like that. So I think, based on my own observation, I think the reason why your application stand out is because of your research proposal, and I think it is very, very relevant to the scholarship you applied, and then also for you, also your academic career. And then I think you were also able to convince the panel to actually, believe in your potentials, and then actually understand that what you want to research is very, very relevant in terms of climate policy, especially within Southeast Asia. So
So I think the main takeaway, right, for that is you have to have a strong research proposal, right? And you have to understand your research proposal inside out. That doesn't mean that you have to have a perfect research proposal. No. My exchange, I mean, I experienced 2 rounds of interviews with these scholars, and they said that, I mean, there are many times where they said, look, here's the weakness of your research proposal. Yeah, we had that, right? I mean, what do you expect from someone who hasn't finished his master's degree to have a research proposal, right? They pointed out the weaknesses in my research proposal, but yet they still believe in this research proposal. That's so. What's the key takeaway? Once again, you have to have a strong research proposal. You have to showcase that you can make a meaningful research puzzle, right? And you have to be able to persuade, your research plan. I think that's the main issue.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think now we'll move on to the next section of the interview. So I would like to know, you already been awarded as the best MS student paper in comparative study on democratic backlashing in Turkey and Indonesia. What are the main similarities in these 2 countries, and what made your paper to be awarded as the best paper?
Thank you very much. Again, what made my paper, being awarded as the best paper? You have to talk to my lecturers for that. I mean, I asked my lecturer for that. Like, did you guys make a mistake, perhaps? Is it really? Do I really deserve the best paper? I don't know, but well, thank you very much. It's a huge privilege to be awarded best paper. Let's talk about the paper, right? I think whenever I analyze a paper, the very first thing that I'm trying to identify is what's actually the main problem, the main question, and the main puzzle that a paper is trying to answer, right? And then how do they answer that question, right? What is the hypothesis? What's the research method that are being used? And so I'd like to talk about my research puzzle first in that paper. I'm trying to compare the current state of democracy in both countries, Indonesia and Turkey. Just for background information, it's useful to think about whether we can compare Turkey and Indonesia, because people would say that, look, Indonesia and Turkey is not comparable in so many respects. I would say, yes, I do agree. These two countries are not really 100% comparable in many respects. However, there are important dimensions when they are actually similar. And one of the most important dimension is that they're both Muslim democracy. If you look at OIC member states, right? If you look at almost all Muslim countries in the world, how many are there that are democracies? Not much.
Not much, yeah.
Right? Right. Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Brunei, Darussalam. Malaysia, even Malaysia is not a democracy. Hardly can be, considered as democracy, right? And so Muslim democracy is a very rare occasion among Muslim states, right? That is one similarity between Indonesia and Turkey. The second, and I think one of the most important similarity, is that for 2 decades, or let's say for the last decade, both countries experienced what scholars called democratic backsliding. Democratic backsliding is basically a state where countries experience a deteriorating quality of their democracy, right? So instead of getting more and more democratic, they're getting more and more autocratic, right? So that's what we called democratic backsliding in political science. Those are 2 main similarities between Indonesia and Turkey. Now, the main difference, and this is the puzzle, right? The main difference is when Turkey and Indonesia, both Muslim democracies and both experiencing democratic backsliding for a few years now, it was only Turkey who fell into autocracy, right? But not Indonesia, right? And so the question is, why does Indonesia is so resilient in at least defending their democracy? On the other hand, Turkey can right away fall into autocracy, right? That is the main question that I'm trying to answer. And so and the way I answer it is I also test a new perspective or a new hypothesis from, I forgot the name of the scholar, but it was a very interesting paper when I read it. And I thought, what if I apply this theory, right, in analyzing Turkey and Indonesia? What will happen? And I think it provides a very interesting insight, because the theory kind of said that, look, when you have democratic backsliding, usually it was caused by the incumbent or the government, the elected officials, right? For instance, in the case of Donald Trump, America is now having democratic backsliding because of Donald Trump, right? Turkey at that time were having a democratic backsliding because of Erdogan, right? Erdogan strategically tried to manipulate the institutions, the democratic institution in Turkey. He also manipulated the constitutions and law enforcement as well, and he managed, right, to did so. Indonesia, I mean, it's open out there. Jokowi tried the same thing. The president of Indonesia, previous president of Indonesia, tried to strategically assault our democratic confidence, right? But the difference between these two countries was that what the opposition did, right, against assaults on democracy. In the case of Turkey, the response from Erdogan's oppositions was quite radical, and because the oppositions opt the radical stance to defend democracy, Erdogan replied with equally radical measures, and that means shutting down democracy. On the other hand, in Indonesia, when the government tried to assault, or when those in power tried to assault democracy, the opposition did not respond using radical measures, but they only respond using moderate measures. They only criticize policies. And so they managed to buy some time for the next election. And that's why our democracy holds.
Oh.
So that is the main insight of the paper, but I'm still working on the details. But that is the, the big argument that I'm trying to propose.
I can now understand why your paper was awarded as the best paper.
Well, thank you.
Looking at it, your topic is unique, and it is also very, very relevant. Trying to compare between Turkey and Indonesia, as you explained, both are Muslim majority countries, and we all understand that in most Muslim nation countries, they don't follow the principles of democracy.
Yes.
So moving on, what advice do you have for young scholars, young academicians who wants to, promote democracy? Because I can just feel that, you are someone who is very, very passionate about democracy and, how for countries to implement democracy and use it to actually guide their development. So what advice do you have for young scholars who want to, promote democracies, in the world?
Okay.
Will you advise them to engage into research, advocacy, or things like that?
Yeah. You might be disappointed with my answer, but I would say you don't have to promote democracy. Is that comment surprising? I hope not. Okay. My paper talked about how can we defend democracy and why some democracies failed, right? Stephen Levitsky, in his book, How Democracy Dies, is a very authoritative book in this issue, right? If you live in democratic countries and you want to defend democracy, I suggest you read that book, because, one of the major causes of why democracy dies is actually not from outside, but from within your country. Most democracies dies because you elect the wrong leaders. You don't elect a Democrats, right? Sure. You elect demagogues, right? You elect people with autocratic tendencies, right? And so if you want to defend democracy, then you have to kick the rascals out, right? Now, that is the case. But if your objective is not political regime per se, if your objective is the prosperity of most people in your country, then I suggest you start working on the economic policy, right? If you're living in an autocracy, that means if you have, policy prescription, then what you want to do is you want to capture the ear of the autocrat, right? Once you get the ear of the autocrat, once the autocrat listens to you, he will provide you with some policy protections, right? And basically you can do anything on that once you got the ear of the autocrat. I don't think you have that imperative to have democracy, right? It really depends on your objective, right, as a scholar. So yeah, that's my take. Just because I talk and discuss, theorize about democracy, doesn't mean in real life I want to have democracy all around the world. Even though, you know, there are some suggestions that if we add more if more countries are more democratic, the instances of war between states are lower, right? The probability, that's what we call democratic peace theory in international relations, which is really promising. The appeal of democracy is really promising, but I don't think that's, you know, the only game in town.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. I look forward to reading your paper because it's it's very interesting. I would like to know what are some of the insights, you know, as you mentioned, you know, to read and understand, you know, the similarities between Indonesia and Turkey in terms of democracy. Well, moving on, I would like to also ask you about your publications. You know, it's very tedious as a student, as an MA student, to actually be doing your assignments, you know, going to class, and then at the same time, you know, having the time to write and publish, you know, which is very, very important, and it's very, very good in as an MA student. You know, you co-authored a book on the political economy of rooftop solar.
Yes.
In Indonesia. Why is Indonesia's clean energy so complex? Like, it seems so complex. What is your own insights about Indonesia's clean energy transition?
Yeah. This is the book. Yeah, this is the book. Sure. I co-authored a book chapter in this book. The Yusuf Kala Library also had a session book forum where we talk about this book, right? When we discuss this book inside out. But of course, I would, you know, recommend basically all the viewers to, you know, go check this out. Okay. However, I'm really sorry, Wally. It's only written in Indonesia. Oh, it's only written in Indonesia.
But the translation.
I will provide the translation for you, just for my book chapter, right? Yeah. I'm just gonna forward it to you. Your main question is why clean energy transition in Indonesia is so complex, and perhaps it's also very challenging, right? And I think that's a very important question. That's one, you know, that is essentially the question that me and my colleague tried to answer. If we, first of all, we need to clarify what energy transitions mean, right? So basically, you want to use other sources of energy. For instance, when we cook, like 100 years ago, we have to collect woods from the forest, right? And we burn the woods and then we cook. Now, we don't use that, right? Now, I think it was like 2 or 3 decades ago, most or a large number of Indonesians still did that, right? They collect woods from nearby area, and then they use that for cooking. And then 2 decades ago, Indonesian government launched an initiative to basically transition to LPG, or liquefied petroleum gas. And so we use cooking stove now, right? And then we use cooking gas to basically cooking. And that was, I argued, that was a very successful energy transition. But in this book, we don't deal with that. We're dealing with another subset of energy transition, which is electricity generation. Electricity generation is a very complex issue, at least in Indonesia. And electricity generation has contributed to the production of thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands of tons of CO2 emissions, right? And as we already know, that's just not good for the environment. It's not good for us as well, right? And one of the source of energy generation for that is actually coal, because Indonesia specifically in Kalimantan Island, there are so many mining coals which owned by nation's oligarch, right? And the national electricity company had to use that coal to for their power plant, right? To generate electricity for basically the whole Indonesia, electricity demand in the whole Indonesia. One thing that we need to understand about the arrangement of electricity distribution in Indonesia is you only have one player. So the market for electricity in Indonesia is very monopolistic. Whether it's good or bad, it's it's outside my discussion. But what we know that electricity market in Indonesia is very monopolistic, and it's only owned by the market is only owned by that electricity company, the government basically, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when we talk about government, it's very easy for people with a lot of money to capture the state, right? And to manipulate policy concessions for the benefit, right? Now, in this case of electricity generation, the electricity company has many pressures from so many ministries.
Sure.
The Ministry of Environment pressured the company to transition, right? On the other hand, the Ministry of Trade and the Ministry of Energy pressured the company to make sure that they can provide electricity to every household in Indonesia, right? So that means and then the Ministry of Finance pressured the company to make some profits,
Sure.
which is hard, man. I mean, if you're the director of the company, you'll have a headache every single day, right? Because a lot of people in Indonesia, I think 10% of people in Indonesia still live under poverty. But yet they also require electricity to get out from that poverty. And so the government subsidize electricity generation and electricity distribution for those level or those echelons of people, basically poor people in Indonesia are being subsidized. So what happened if that's the case, right? The consequence is the company needs to have stable source of electricity generation. And one stable source is coal, right? That's the only viable option. It's not the only viable option now, but at least a decade or 2 decades ago, coal is a stable source of electricity generation. It's cheap. It's easy to manage. It's easy to access, right? And if you have some surpluses, you can sell the coal to the global market, right? And now we have that. Now, if you do that for basically 2 decades, right? Our electricity generation now is really dependent on coal. If you do that, you kind of lock in, right, to this kind of electricity generation mode.
Yeah, I think you already answered the question. Looking at it, I was also opportune to attend Indonesia's Net Zero conference.
Net Zero conference, yes.
So while I was attending the conference, I had like, Indonesia's target by 2050, to actually, have net zero. So I think, Indonesia's case is going to be very, very complex for Indonesia to transition to renewable energy. Because if you're looking at it in the Just Energy Transition project, the reason why the project didn't succeed in Indonesia is because, as you mentioned, the monopolized market of electricity, which is PLN, which
PLN.
contributes the production and distribution of energy within the country. So I think that discourages the private sector from taking part, in the energy distribution, like in the production of renewable energy to compete with PLN. And then I think the other thing also you mentioned, subsidy also is very, very key. Indonesia's electricity is subsidized. It is very cheap. So what it means is if the country should transition to renewable energy, there is a risk of it being very expensive. If also the private sector also venture into it, there is also a risk of it being very expensive. And I think the government don't want to, do that because it's already, very, very cheap. So it's going to be a political backlash if energy prices increase, things like that, because people are already used to the subsidies in in energy production and distribution and things like that. So I think two insights I would take from you is the subsidies, and then also the monopoly of energy, which is PLN, which controls everything in terms of energy production, distribution to the entire state. So that discourage the private sector from taking part, into renewable energy and things like that. So I think it's going to be very, very complex for Indonesia to transition, though the country has the potentials to do so, but it's going to be very, very, difficult. So what we hope that, Indonesia will also, transition to renewable energy, because looking at it in terms of emissions within Southeast Asia, it is among the countries that emit more. And at the same time, they don't only produce coal, but they also export to other countries. So that makes Indonesia one of the countries that will really need to transition to renewable energy. So thank you so much.
I think so. Yeah.
For
Thank
that.
you. Thank you very much.
I think we can now move on to what role do you see Indonesia playing? In terms of renewable energy transition, like what is the role Indonesia is playing? Because we understand that today there is so much of geopolitical tensions in terms of renewable energy transition and climate change issues, like China, US, in terms of who will compensate in terms of climate finance and things like that. So what do you think Indonesia's role is currently, like in terms of geopolitical issues? What are they doing in terms of energy transition at the global level, the advocacies and things like that?
Yeah, very specific on the issue of energy transition, right? Again, I'm not the right, I don't think I'm the right person to talk about this. But my take for that question would be very disappointing for policymakers in Indonesia. My main point is this. We have a huge potential, right, in energy transition, in realizing our potential in renewable energy.
Sure.
The problem is we do not assume that role, right? And we should start to taking that leading role in, energy transition. What are the main ingredients of energy transition? You have, if it's solar panel, you need constant sun exposures. We have it, right? If it's hydropower, you need basically high volumes of maybe rivers or dams, right? We have it. If it's wind, we have some places where we can have wind turbines. If it's geothermal, we also have some sites where they can produce geothermal. Is it technology? My book said that, book chapter that I wrote said that the price for solar rooftop, right, and electricity generation from solar is just getting cheaper and cheaper every year, right? So technology adoption with that price, I don't think is an issue, right? The role that we are having currently is an example of how a country undervalue its potential, right? which is a very upsetting, upsetting diagnosis for many policymakers. But I have to say the blunt truth, right?
You are insinuating that Indonesia has the resources, but it is not utilizing it in the area of energy transition.
We have everything what it takes to transition, but we don't do it, right?
Okay.
And we don't do it fast enough, right? We have to do that fast enough. Let me give you one example from my book, right? Well, if you are an average Indonesian and you want to put solar panel on your rooftop, right? You can't just do it right away. You can't just buy a solar panel and then you renovate electricity circuits in your home. You also have to come to PLN, electricity company, and you have to ask permissions to PLN that, look, I want to buy a solar rooftop, and so basically I don't really need electricity from you, right? And if that's the case, the PLN won't do it because the PLN also have the interest to sell electricity, right? That they have bought from coal miners, right? And that's a bureaucratic hurdles, right? We have state level regulations for having solar panel rooftop. It was issued by the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. But the problem is that regulation changes twice every year. Now, if you if you have state level regulations that changes twice every year or once every year, you won't have any certainty, right? Businessman, layman person cannot work with uncertainty, right? And so we have we should have a certain regulation. We need certain regulations to really transition, right? Otherwise, we're just gonna, stay in our place.
Okay. As I mentioned, we almost getting close to the closing of the program, and I would like to get advice from you. Like, I want to ask, what advice do you have for students in the Faculty of Social Sciences to actually be able to focus on their academic journey, at the same time being very active as scholars, like as incoming scholars, to actually publish, write books, So what advice do you have for people, students who are in the social sciences areas, not only in the social science, but also in other disciplines? Because sitting here, I'm really honored and inspired by you, being an MA student. I believe you guys will be graduating very soon, this month. So, and you have already won a scholarships to study in one of the most prestigious universities in London. So what advice do you have for some students in the social sciences or in the university who want to follow suit and achieve, what have you achieved so far? Yeah.
Right. Can I ask you something? After finishing your master's study, do you want to also pursue PhD?
Well, for me, my academic interests, I want to focus. I want to pursue my PhD either in climate diplomacy or in climate finance. After finishing my MA, my MPT program currently. Yeah.
Right. I think, look, academic calling may not occur to everyone, right?
Sure.
Just because we read certain books that pique our interest doesn't mean that we have that academic calling to really come up with theories, right? Because writing PhD dissertations basically comes down to providing the literature with new insights and new theories, right? But maybe not everyone has that, calling to do that, right? What I'm saying is, it's not an obligation, right? So having academic degrees is not an obligation. And you don't have to have many academic degrees to really contribute directly to whatever it is that you want to contribute to the society, right? But if you have passions on teaching, writing, right, communicating scientific papers to the wide audience, then yes, the world of academia is a place for you, right? And so if you have that passion, right, in research, in sitting for hours every single day, staring at your laptop, right? Open pages after pages of books and journals, then I suggest you pursue a PhD, right? Sure. I would say use your time, especially for students, right? Use your time in here at UIII as good as possible, right? Because this opportunity perhaps is a very rare opportunity to be awarded scholarship or to be able to study here in this university. And this university has almost all the resources that you need, right? And this university also has almost all the connections and recommendations that you need, especially from scholars, right? Always look at how your lecturers or some scholars that you look up to talk and present their research, right? Because sometimes, you know, they can communicate their research to a very wide audience, even to someone who is not an expert in that field, right? Just look at how they convey the message, and look at how they, on a very technical level, look at how they argue, right? And from that, you can learn how to make your own argument, and you can learn how to come up with perhaps a more authentic argument of yourself, right? So yeah, I mean,
wow, I think
reading and writing and so on and so forth.
That's really inspiring, you know. So like, how has the life in, you know, UIII, you know, been to you, like in terms of both academic, professional, you know, experiences? You know, what can you say about, you know, about your life in UIII, like spending like 2 years? What are some of the experiences, you know, you gained so far?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I would say it's beyond expectation. I mean, when I recall the first time I tried to apply into this university, I thought, all right, yeah, this is a master's study, but still in Indonesia. To be frank, I wasn't expecting this level of graduate training and education. But as I, you know, experience it firsthand, right, and as I walk through all of the academic requirements and all of the academic tasks that the faculty members have designed, I would say that, yeah, this is a very excellent, right, university.
Sure.
Now let's allow me to talk a little bit, right? We have a lot of programs in Indonesian universities that have the title of international program, right? International university, international graduate school, research, blah, 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 right? But when you come into the program and you sit in the class, the lecturers talk in Indonesia. They don't talk in English, right? The papers are not written in English. Here in this university, no, that's not the case, right? You talk in English. I have one class where the lecturer and all of the students are all Indonesians, but we still talk in English, right? So we live by our name, right? International University. And the quality of or the structure of faculty members all of them are PhDs from basically prestigious universities, right? From a PhD from America, PhD from Germany, PhD from Australia. Basically, people who were trained in, you know,
universities.
Important places, right? And they were trained by important people, right? I mean, the leading expert in their field, right? And that's why I would really love to market this university both to young scholars of Indonesia and young scholars in the global south or the global north.
So, yeah, I think, you know, you said it all. One thing about this university, which is very, very unique of the university, is its diversity. You know, I have other friends who are studying in other universities, but most of the time their lectures are delivered in Bahasa. Like, you know, sometimes I would be like, how do you guys understand? They say like, now you can speak the language fluently.
Now you know, speak Bahasa fluently, right?
But here, looking at it here you don't even have to, though we do Bahasa course, you know, for every student, it's a mandatory for you to do a Bahasa course. But it is still not, you know, even if you can speak fluent Bahasa, but it's still not a big deal. Like all lectures are entirely purely in English.
Purely in English,
you know,
100%
and honestly, you know, it's great. You know, the lecturers are very, very, you know, fluent in English. You know, as you mentioned, some are trained in Harvard, you know, top universities. So it is really a privilege, you know, for some of us to come and study in this university, because it is really an eye-opener, and, you know, we gain a lot of knowledge from the lecturers. And then, you know, there are so many resources the students can also access. For example, the Yusuf Kala Library, you know, which is open almost 24/7 from Monday to, you know, to Saturdays mostly. So I think, you know, you said it all. UIII, life in UIII, you know, is really, you know, great. If anyone wants to be a scholar, I think here is the place to start from.
Place that you have to consider.
Exactly. So finally, just to, you know, close this question with just to ask final question. How do you want to contribute your knowledge back to Indonesia? Like, currently you already get your master's degree. I understand you co-authored books, publish articles, but then you are now going for PhD. You know, how do you, you know, envision yourself contributing back to Indonesia? You know, Indonesia's development and advancement. You know, and then also, what are your, you know, maybe, you know, long-term goals or career goals after completing, you know, your PhD and things like that? Are we gonna see a Rizky who's gonna come back and be a professor in this university, or?
I don't know what the future holds, but yeah, first of all, I will make sure that I can attain the PhD degree, because it's a whole another challenge, right? I get where you're going with your question, right? What is, and basically this is also a question that I asked to a lot of professors, right? Look, we here, myself, let's say, here in UIII, spending taxpayers' money, right? For me to basically read, write, and sleep, repeat, right? And if I get lucky, I can publish what I write, right? But what's the point, right? What's the feedback for those taxpayers' money?
Sure.
If you study economics, or if you study political science, then I think your main audience would be those who make policies, right? The lawmakers, the policymakers, not only in the government, but also in companies, right? Private companies, because they also make policies, right? For their workers, they also make policies to their consumers, perhaps. And if you can get the ear of the autocrat in private companies and in governments, then you can shape policy to a better cause, right? However, Wali, my principle, right, is that, look, talking to policymakers, talking to government, talking to leaders, quote unquote, is your secondary obligation. There is another and more important obligation as scholar, which is to provide accuracy, right? Or which, or I like to put it, to generate accurate theories, right? Theory that can predict, theory that can explain the state of the world, right? Yes, we have to change the world, but we haven't done it with understanding the world, right? And so the main responsibility for us scholars and perhaps young scholars and, you know, more seasoned scholars is actually to write down and to provide a good way or the right way to really understand the world, right? How the world works. And as we get that information, we can talk to policymakers and we can talk to world leaders. Look, this is how the world is run by you. And if you want to make a better change, then you should not run the world as you do now, right? Right. Here's my research. Here's the data. Here's what I can explain about the data. I can make sure that the data is accurate. I can make sure that my research is robust. And then, only then, you have the confidence and you have the right to talk to world leaders.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Rizky, for joining us today. I think we have already come to the end of this program, and honestly, I'm really honored to be the moderator asking you all these questions. But thank you so much for the wonderful answers. I think you have already inspired a lot of students in the Faculty of Social Sciences.
I hope so.
And beyond, you know, to actually follow suit on what you have achieved so far, your academic journey, your professional journey. You know, it has really been, you know, it's really inspiring. You know, and I'm saying congratulations on your scholarship, and I wish you all the best of luck from here to London to pursue your PhD. And I hope, you know, you'll come back someday to to actually be one of the professors in this university. You know, so thank you so much, viewers. We have come to end of this program, and thank you so much to Joseph Kala Students Talk in collaboration with ASIS, Faculty of Social Science Students Association. And thank you so much for the media team for organizing this. It is really an honor. And until we see you next time, I am Wali Eso. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.